Thank you for joining me on 13 Plus. I'm Cali Lichter, and this is On the Docket, a weekly recap of crime and court in and around the state of Michigan. This week, a series of shootings which have left 3 people dead in Grand Rapids continues to raise awareness amongst police as these summer months lead to more conflict. And a Grand Rapids man is dead after being shot and killed in Arkansas after a nationwide manhunt for his arrest. All of that and more is On the Docket. On June 7th, Grand Rapids had its second deadly shooting of the year. It came a little over 2 weeks after Grand Rapids' first deadly shooting of the year. 13 on your side obtained court documents that reveal more about the events that unfolded at the Pleasant Motel on 28th Street Southeast. Police were called to the motel for a medical complaint around 8:30 that night. When officers arrived, they found 26-year-old Demarius Cochran lying in the motel parking lot with a gunshot wound to his back. Cochran was brought to a nearby hospital, but he died from his injuries. Officers at the scene spoke with witnesses and motel staff who revealed that the incident was likely captured on surveillance video. When they watched that video, police were able to identify 32-year-old Devin Hale as their suspect. They learned that he resides in a room at the motel. Police said his ex-girlfriend, Alicia Gordon, resides in the motel as well in a separate room. They had since broken up, but police say that they remain close friends. The surveillance footage shows Hale and Cochran interacting in the motel parking lot. And according to police, they said the video then, quote, clearly shows Hale pull out a silver and black handgun, which he pointed at Cochran and shot him with. And also, according to police, footage showed Hale then entered the motel with Gordon, his ex-girlfriend, and the pair went to her room together. After that, police said the footage showed them leave her room and go to Hale's room together. Shortly after that, the footage shows Gordon leave Hale's room alone and go back to hers. And police officers surrounded the motel and directed Gordon to leave her motel room. She complied with officers and was taken into custody. Soon after Gordon's arrest, Hale surrendered to police and was arrested without incident. Once back at the police station, Gordon admitted to police that she had seen her ex-boyfriend shoot Cochran, and police said Hale, however, admitted to having a negative interaction with Cochran, but denied shooting him. Police said he also denied being armed with a firearm. When police executed search warrants for both Hale and Gordon's rooms, they found ammunition underneath the bed in Hale's room and found the firearm in the toilet tank of Gordon's. Hale has been charged with multiple charges, including homicide, open murder, which is a felony charge that carries a possible life sentence, and various weapons-related charges. And so that shooting wasn't the only fatal one in Grand Rapids since the first reported fatal shooting of the year on May 23rd. In the 3 weeks since the first fatal shooting of the year, there have been 3 other deadly shootings in the city, 2 occurring overnight from June 12th to June 13th. We talked with Grand Rapids Police Chief Eric Winstrom, who still remains cautiously optimistic about community safety improvements.
2 more deaths in the city of Grand Rapids, which marks 4 lives lost to gun violence in the city this year.
You've been through it before. Does not make it. It never gets easier, and yeah, so it's a tough day for the city.
The first shooting around 11 p.m. on June 12th took the life of a teenager. Grand Rapids police say the 15-year-old girl was shot inside a home on North Avenue Northeast.
We're still putting those pieces together, but leaning towards believing that it was a tragedy that perhaps wasn't. She was not the intended target.
GRPD says she died Friday morning, and a person of interest is in custody. The second shooting happened around 1 a.m. on June 13th. A man identified as 30-year-old Samaj James was found inside a house on Cass Avenue Southeast and was pronounced dead at the scene.
One seemed very, very personal, with likely the offender and the victim knew each other and were some sort of ongoing conflict.
Grand Rapids Police Chief Eric Winstrom says these shootings are not connected and it's not a trend of random violence.
Both of these circumstances were very specific to and not really signs of a trend of any sort. Doesn't make it any easier for the family of these these individuals who were killed yesterday.
Windstrom wants to stress curbing gun violence is the responsibility of everyone in the community, not just law enforcement.
I've seen more and more individuals recognize that and say, you know, it's not just the police department's job to deal with gun violence, it's everybody's job. And the more that message gets sent, I think the safer a city we will be.
The first Grand Rapids shooting death of the year happened 3 weeks ago on May 23rd. Julia Gorman, 13 on your side.
Grand Rapids police are asking for your help finding a person of interest in a shooting that happened earlier this month. The shooting happened at a car meetup in the early morning hours of June 1st at Centerpoint Mall, and this is drone footage that we captured at the parking lot. Now, police say the person in this photo was wearing a white shirt with the blue logo on the front and a large airbrushed logo on the back, a black hat with a circular white logo, blue jeans, white shoes, and was carrying a black shoulder bag. The man who was shot is still in recovery. We were at the scene of a deadly crash between a car and a bicyclist back in January in Grand Rapids, and now a man has been charged. Caleb Stressman, pilot, is charged with a moving violation causing death. A man was riding his bike around 6:30 p.m. in the area of Pearl Street and Scribner Avenue on January 11th of this year when he was hit by a car exiting from US 131, and that location is in downtown Grand Rapids. Initially, Stressman, pilot, was arrested for operating while intoxicated, but Kent County prosecutor Chris Becker says his levels were not over the legal limit.
There's also a question about reckless driving causing death, and based on the facts and circumstances, which I can't get into a whole lot, but there was not a sufficient basis to cause reckless driving causing death. Reckless driving requires willful and wanton disregard of the rights and safety of others to file a charge for any sort of reckless, and based on all the evidence we had, we couldn't reach that level.
Pilot's charge is a misdemeanor, and he faces a year in jail, a $2,000 fine, and the suspension of his driving privileges for a year. Coming up next, hear how one Grand Rapids man wanted for carjacking and kidnapping ended up in Arkansas after a nationwide manhunt. And a family is remembering their mother who tragically passed away on Mother's Day of this year, how they're fighting for change. Through collaboration with one of our sister stations in Little Rock, Arkansas, we learned a Grand Rapids man was killed in a shootout with Arkansas State Police on June 11th, wanted for carjacking and kidnapping out of Manistee County. I dug through the details and the man's previous history. After 2 days on the run, a Grand Rapids man wanted out of Manistee County was killed in a state police shootout on a highway in Arkansas. Arkansas State Police say Felipe Millon Gomez was wanted out of Manistee County, Michigan for carjacking and kidnapping. On June 9th, Manistee County Sheriff's Department says they responded to a report of carjacking. A woman told deputies a man, identified as Millon Gomez, got in the passenger seat of her car while in her driveway, pulled out a gun, and told her to drive. The woman told deputies she previously knew him. While driving, she told deputies she was able to jump out of her car. Then Millon Gomez climbed over the center console and drove away. The Sheriff's Department says her vehicle was abandoned in Benzie County. 2 days later, on June 11th, Arkansas State Police say they, along with U.S. Marshals, found Millon Gomez about 20 minutes out of Little Rock on I-40 in Lonoke County. When they conducted a traffic stop, they say Millon Gomez got out of his car with a weapon. Troopers then shot and killed him. The shooting is under investigation to determine if the use of force is consistent with Arkansas law. Millon Gomez has a history of weapons-related convictions. According to the Michigan Department of Corrections, in 2009, Millon Gomez took a plea deal and was sentenced to 10 to 30 years in the Michigan Department of Corrections for armed robbery and 2 years for weapons felony firearm. And in 2022, circuit court records say he pleaded guilty to carrying concealed weapons and possession of a firearm by a felon. He was sentenced to 1 to 5 years consecutively for both charges, and those cases were all out of Kent County. As of this taping, the Manistee County Sheriff's Office says they are still searching for Millon Gomez's accomplice in the carjacking, who they say dropped him off and picked him up from the carjacking. And two sisters are sharing the story of their mother, a woman they call selfless, funny, and full of love, who was killed by a drunk driver on Mother's Day. Her name was Colleen Ligfoot, a proud mother and grandmother who made everyone feel seen. Her daughters are now navigating life without her and honoring the legacy she left behind. Our Alexis Dumergian reports how the family is turning their grief into a message of awareness.
I feel like growing up with our mom, she was always supportive, always there, always present. You know, she never missed anything, always helped with schoolwork as needed, and, you know, always involved.
Even now with being moms of our own, every day learning of like, these are the things that she instilled in us to be moms, her being our mom, becoming better moms because of it.
Colleen Ligvogt raised her daughters on the west side of Grand Rapids, a single mom who put her kids first and later her grandkids too.
She has taught us that each kid needs their each individual type of parenting as well. And her, as the grandma, or as she's referred to as Mimi, has mimied each of the kids 6 different ways.
Her love showed up in laughter and in traditions. She made sure to make everyone in the room feel special, especially her grandkids.
With the grandkids, every year for Christmas gave them an ornament. So they each had an individual one, and she would go and pick an ornament for each one of them. I can't recall when we were kids, when she wasn't at an event, she made time for every event of us as children, and she did for all of our grandkids as well.
On Mother's Day, Colleen spent the morning with her mother, daughters, and grandchildren. Hours later, she was killed just miles away, hit by a suspected drunk driver.
Telling your children that their Mimi is no longer here is probably the hardest thing that we've had to do.
They hope their heartbreak leads to awareness and ultimately change.
If it brings awareness to even just one person and saves somebody else's life, it matters.
From holiday ornaments to summer at her house, Colleen left a legacy that still surrounds them.
It doesn't matter how much you've had, whether it's drinking or if you've taken prescriptions or, you know, any level of that, but just to bring awareness to everybody of, don't put yourself in that position, because ultimately you're putting somebody else in a position as well.
Alexis Dumersheen, 13 on your side.
A man has been charged in her death, and you can find more about that on our website, 13onyourside.com. And 1 year later, the father of Amelia Penn wants to see the Grand Rapids street where his son was shot and killed renamed in his honor. However, not everyone is on board with the name change. While some people say it isn't right to commemoratively rename Umatillaa Street in honor of Penn, his father says he's going to do what he can. For months, the father of Amelia Penn has been trying to get the name of the street where his son died commemoratively renamed in his honor. But not everyone who lives on the street is on board with the gesture.
You guys are going to open up a can of worms you can't close.
We don't need a sign to validate violence.
It brings back too much memories of what happened right there on that street.
Amelia Penn was 15 years old when police say he was shot and killed by Cartier Pascal on Umatillaa Street in southeast Grand Rapids a year ago. At the Grand Rapids City Commission meeting Tuesday, people who live on Umatillaa spoke out against the renaming.
My condolences go out to the family of the young man. But I do not want to see that sign on that street.
A few said their mom was known as the Queen of the U, and they had permission to put a commemorative street name up, but it was taken down.
I believe renaming the street is not the most appropriate way to honor his memory.
Another concern was the permanent reminder of violence.
We do not want to remember that. It's just a part of us.
Others shared general concerns about the memorial for Amelia.
When they have their little anniversaries and stuff, hundreds and hundreds of kids show up. Now, could you imagine all these kids in your neighborhood not thinking that the same thing that just happened with his son could happen again?
Corey Penn says Amelia was a child of the community, and he's going to do what he can to keep his son's name alive.
You know, you guys are going to do what you want to do. I'm going to continue to honor my son.
The commemorative naming decision is now past the Community Development Committee, which will recommend next steps for the commission. We have an On the Docket episode all about Amelia's story with an exclusive sit-down with the Grand Rapids Police Department streaming right now on 13+. You can watch it after this episode is finished because we have more on the docket this week. Coming up next, a local expert breaks down the landmark decision for President Trump to call in the National Guard during protests in Los Angeles and how this may go to court and how that may play out. All that is more is on the docket. Mid-June, at the time of this taping, President Trump deployed the National Guard troops in Los Angeles without consulting California Governor Gavin Newsom. A retired brigadier general with the Michigan National Guard believes the move by the president is illegal. Professor Michael McDaniel, now a law professor at Cooley Law School in Lansing, said because of the Los Angeles Police Department has been responding to the situation, as he calls it, aggressively, there's no need to call in the National Guard. And this has been done without Governor Newsom's approval. Earlier this week, Newsom called the president asking him to rescind the deployment, calling it a serious breach of state sovereignty, according to the Associated Press. Some of the protests have turned violent, which is one of the reasons the president has mobilized the troops, including United States Marines. Professor McDaniel has spent time in the Michigan National Guard and the Pentagon. He believes the move is a breach of rights, adding that there's not enough of a reason for troops to be in the city.
The White House has to demonstrate not just that federal laws are being broken, but they are being broken, and that state and federal assets are unable to assure that health, safety, and welfare is being met. And of course they are. As I said, my premises, LAPD has been quite aggressive in shutting down these protesters and getting things under control, and they clearly did.
Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel has also commented on the situation, calling the deployment of troops an affront to state sovereignty and domestic rule of law. As of this taping, Gavin Newsom has filed an emergency order in federal court to block President Trump's order. And on June 11th, we heard from state lawmakers after a vast majority of Michigan state troopers say they have no confidence in MSP leadership. To simply put it, some lawmakers want Colonel Grady out of the job.
Let's step up. Let's change leadership. We've given this guy a chance. He's not performing. Let's replace him with somebody that actually has our troopers' backs.
That's State Senator Eric Nesbitt siding with state troopers in a recent letter depicting how some of them feel. In the joint letter by the Michigan State Police Troopers Association and the Michigan State Police Command Officers Association, and members of the unions were asked to vote if they had confidence in Colonel James Grady and Lieutenant Colonel Amy Brimacombe. 75% of members responded, with 98% of the MSPTA saying no and 90% of the MSPCOA saying no. The letter says the two MSP leaders have failed to live up to the agency's philosophy. Several lawmakers have spoke up in support of this letter, including State Senator Nesbitt. He says morale is down because Colonel Grady has strayed away from putting the agency first.
It's not about these woke ideology, social justice programs. Our cops and law enforcement officials, officers, they're not social welfare workers. There's a place for those folks. It's not in law enforcement, and that's what we've seen, is that these woke policies of cashless bonds for violent felons, policies of letting out criminals, violent criminals early, it's not working. It hasn't worked.
But it's not up to lawmakers or even employees to find a new leader. Governor Gretchen Whitmer is in charge of deciding who leaves the agency. We reached out to her office, and her press secretary responded saying, quote, Colonel Grady has demonstrated strong and steady leadership at the helm of the Michigan State Police. He has worked his way up through the ranks over 25 years, putting public safety first and keeping our communities safe. She goes on to credit him, saying, quote, Michigan has seen major drops in violent crime recently. He's also had troopers' backs by fighting for pay raises for the men and women who risk their life every day to keep our state safe. We have full confidence in Colonel Grady to continue getting the job done, end quote. Several other lawmakers are also speaking up, and you can see what they have to say on our website, 13onyourside.com. And the final story on the docket today, J.D. Vance has been arrested for threatening J.D. Vance. Let me explain. A Grand Rapids man, ironically named James Donald Vance Jr., is facing a federal indictment for social media posts threatening the president and vice president. He's accused of threatening to kill and injure President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance in posts shared on the social media site Blue Sky. He He also faces charges of interstate threatening communication. Both are punishable by 5 years in prison. Federal court records show he was arrested on June 11th, and his post, allegedly posted on his account Diaper JDV, says, "If Trump, Vance, or Musk ever come to my city again, they will leave it in a body bag. I will either be shot by a Secret Service sniper or spend the rest of my life in prison. I've only got about 10 years of life left anyway, so I don't," expletive, "care either way." Vance Jr. is also accused of replying to another user's post on Blue Sky on the topic of Donald Trump Jr.'s potential run for president in 2028. Law enforcement said he posted this, "I will murder that stupid," expletive, before he gets Secret Service protection. Vance Jr. pleaded not guilty to all counts and was released on bond. Thanks for joining me in this episode of On the Docket on 13+. We have new episodes releasing every week, taking you into the courtroom for the latest updates and deep dives on crime in and around West Michigan. In the meantime, we will bring you the latest on crime in court, both on air and online at 13onyourside.com. And when breaking news affects you and your community, we stream live on 13+ with what you need to know right when you need to know. We'll see you next time with updates on what's on the docket.